How's it going, everyone? Today we are going to be talking about a camera that I recently had the opportunity to test out thanks to a friend, and that is going to be the Leica M10. The reason I ended up testing out the M10 is I was looking for a way to kind of have a camera that I could use more for personal work, and I didn't want it to be film. I was looking for more of a digital experience that I could actually enjoy a bit more, because as much as I've tried to use the Sony for personal work, especially having like a 24-70 and like a 70-200, it's not really a camera setup that you use for more everyday or just kind of like bringing along when you're with friends or going to a cottage for a weekend, something like that. It definitely doesn't really fit that hole. So originally I was looking at the X100V, and with that I thought it was a really good fit. It definitely has incredible reviews. Fuji has a great color system, and it is something that I'm familiar with using previously when I had the X100S. And it was a great camera. I just kind of moved up from it when I moved into more of the Canon ecosystem before coming into the Sony ecosystem. So I had some plans with my family to go to Prince Edward County, and with that I thought that was a perfect opportunity to kind of test a personal or everyday camera. That's primarily what I would want to be using it for, so I started to track down a X100V, which I had lined up, but a few days before that I had a friend on Instagram reach out to me who got a really wicked deal on an M10, that if I wanted to try it out for that weekend, he was more than happy to, so thank you again. I'll be forever appreciative of that. It's definitely not a camera that a lot of people would ideally want to lend out, but appreciate you letting me take it for a spin once again. And a little update as well is, since the winter camping video, which I actually shot primarily on my, I think only actually on my Leica MA, I actually sold it. Not sure why. At that moment in time I was just trying to narrow down my kit, and 35mm I wasn't too thrilled with at that time, and I saw what the market was for film M bodies and kind of just took advantage and jumped on it. But I did hold on to the lenses, so I still had the 28 Summicron version 2 and the 50mm 1.4 spherical, and they were just kind of sitting on the shelf for the longest time, and I was trying to decide, do I want to sell these lenses? Do I want to hold on to them? Do I want to save up for something else in the Leica ecosystem, or should I just back out of it altogether? And those are two lenses that are incredibly difficult to part with. I love the rendering on both. I love the size of them. It's just, I don't know what it is, but the Leica ecosystem, especially on the M bodies, it definitely grabs a hold of you, and it's either you love it or you don't like it at all. And I definitely fall in the camp of loving it, but it is definitely, in my opinion, one of the hardest ecosystems to be happy with. It's a very difficult one. Like with a lot of cameras, like my Hasselblad, right when I got it, I've never been not happy with it. It's always been a joy to use. I know what camera I want, I know what lenses I want, and that's it. But when it comes to the Leica side of things, it tends to fluctuate constantly. Like there's the digital side, there's the film side, there's the vintage film side, the modern film side. It just gets so blurry, and you just kind of get a bit overwhelmed with what you want with the system, and it doesn't make it any easier that they are priced the way they are priced. I think that's the other part that kind of hinders you from making an easy decision, because you're always caught up with the idea of how will it be in the long run, because you're putting down so much money. How long will that camera last, especially comparing like film to digital? What are repairs going to look like? What's the resale going to look like? And as soon as you kind of get looped into all those kind of financial aspects of it, it becomes a very difficult thing to buy when it's not something that you can just kind of justify very easily, because again, they are not affordable cameras in any regard. There are plenty of other 35mm film cameras that will give you great images, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, with Leica, you're paying for the rangefinder experience, which is really the only system you're going to get that type of rangefinder experience, and it was definitely something I missed. And fast forwarding to when I actually did pick up the M10, all I did was take the 50mm with me, and right away when I mounted it on that camera, it just felt so familiar, and it took me right back to my love for the rangefinder, my memories of using the MA. It just felt incredible. But there are a couple different aspects of this camera that I want to talk about that aren't going to be technical at all. So if you're interested in that, this isn't going to be that kind of video. It's going to be a very weird philosophical view on the Leica M10 and how it kind of fits for me or it doesn't fit for me. So I think the first thing to look at with the M10 is comparing it to a film M, because at the end of the day, when you're deciding between the two of them, it really comes down to a decision between the experience that you're getting with the camera and the end result. In terms of the experience, I was worried that I was going to run into the same issues with the M10 that I had with the M9 in terms of just overshooting everything. Just because you have the freedom of digital, you can take as many shots as you want, and there's nothing for you to really worry about. That wasn't the case. When I took the M10 out for the weekend, I actually only shot exactly 250 files, which is definitely more than I would have shot with film, but it was a happy number. It wasn't something that I was blown away with. I wasn't overwhelmed with having to edit a whole bunch. I was actually rather pleased that I was able to contain myself, and I didn't feel like I wasn't shooting too much, and I didn't feel like I was really forcing myself to not shoot. That was just me naturally kind of shooting when I saw something or something that caught my eye. Or just like a moment with my family kind of popped up. But one thing, even though I didn't shoot a ton, one thing I did notice is that there were a lot of moments that I was photographing that I don't think I would have regularly photographed on film. I think it just comes down to what the costs of film are and the fact that you only have so many shots per roll. You tend to be a bit more reserved on what you want to photograph. If something happens, you'll be like, is it worth the frame? And a lot of the times, I know me personally, like, I won't shoot it. The lighting may not be good. It may be happening too fast and I don't want to risk missing focus, anything like that. But with the M10, I would just take that shot. There were a lot of things where I was being a lot quicker, just because I knew if I missed, I didn't get it, it didn't matter. And I thought that was something that was really freeing about using the M system, but in a way where I could be completely free, shoot as much as I want, and not have to worry about anything. Comparing that to a film M, you're definitely being a lot more selective. You're taking your time. You're making sure that you're going to be in focus, because you don't want to waste those frames, and you may not have 100 rolls with you, so you're going to be selective to make sure that you fill out that roll. The only issue with that is if you are using it for more personal work, which I think 90% of the people who are using Leica are just shooting it for themselves and for fun, you're kind of hurting yourself by not shooting a lot of stuff. Like, especially if you're doing stuff with like family and friends, if there's a moment that comes up and you're not taking the shot just because it's on film, you don't want to waste that shot, it's kind of defeating the whole purpose of having a personal everyday camera, right? And that was a very eye-opening thing with the M10. It's something that I still really think of a lot, especially as now I consider getting a film M again. It's definitely something I want to kind of remedy, and making sure I'm not letting a camera decide how much or how little I'm shooting. It's that I'm actively going out as a photographer to photograph all those moments in between, regardless of what format it is. And that's actually something I'm going to come back to a little later on in the video as well. Now, jumping in a little bit more technically with the M10, it is an older camera. It's from 2017, so it's coming up around 5 years now at the time of recording this video. There's a couple issues with that. Don't get me wrong, it is a great camera. The colors are really nice. The files are good, but it's a 2017 file. And coming from shooting two A9 Mark IIs, there's definitely a lot less flexibility in the files, and that's what makes it very hard to justify. And especially if you've watched any reviews on the Leica M10, you know for a fact that the highlight retention is not going to be there. And that was definitely something that I came across when editing, and that was also something that I was very aware of when I was shooting it. I was always being extremely cautious of what my highlights were going to be looking like, because I didn't want to lose an image just because the highlights were going to be blown out and I wasn't going to be able to recover any information. But other than that, I think that was the only downside or thing that you had to be aware of. The M10 or the M system in general doesn't have to be fast. You don't need a whole bunch of frames per second. As long as it turns on and your ISO is going to be decent, you're good, which that camera was. The ISO I had no problems with. It just really felt a little bit dated, if I'm going to be honest, compared to what I'm used to with the Sony system, which the files are like Play-Doh. You can really do whatever you want with them and it's going to work out. But again, the biggest pro of having an M that is digital like the M10 is being able to see the rendering of the lenses right away. And in my opinion, the rendering comes out a bit more with a digital file compared to the film scan, just because there's a bit more like clinical detail, I would kind of describe it as. So you definitely see the difference right away. And with those lenses, to me, that those are the best rendering lenses. Like I love those. That's why it's so hard to part from them, and why I'm kind of struggling to find an M that fits my kind of shooting style and what I need out of the camera, just because I don't want to move those lenses. I love everything about them, love the size, love the two focal lengths. I think they pair so well together, but it's just really about finding what's going to work for me in personal life, and potentially as a camera that I can use for client work, because I'd have no problem using the M10 for a lot of the stuff I shoot. I would just have to be a bit more cautious about what the subject is and making sure I'm using it in an appropriate setting. So while the experience of shooting the Leica M10 was fantastic, and the files were basically what I was going to expect, and the rendering of the lenses were amazing, and it was a ton of fun to use, and it just felt great carrying around a Leica again. There was actually some insight that I took away from this trip that I wasn't really expecting, and that came from my sister, because she brought her new iPhone. And I know these are completely different systems, but just seeing her use that, because she just got it and was using it heavily on that trip as well, it made me really think about the uses of a personal camera and how it kind of fits into your life, or how it becomes obtrusive, just a couple different things with it. And I was really thinking about it a lot, not only throughout the day, but also when editing the files. I was noticing that how quick she could capture moments, how easy it was, and you can definitely do it easily on a Leica M10. But as I was editing through the files, I was looking at a lot of the ones that were my favorites, and especially when it's something involving family, as a personal camera would be, I've realized that a lot of the photos that I liked, it would not have mattered what I shot it on. It could have been like the new iPhone, could have been an old iPhone. It doesn't matter as long as I kind of got that photo. And I think that's what makes the iPhone such a beautiful tool to have, or a mobile phone camera in general, is because it's always with you and you don't have to think about it. Everyone's kind of way more natural in front of it, instead of having to pull up a camera and then everyone thinks it's a big deal. Especially in my family, anytime I pull up any camera in general, they always think it's a film camera, and they always think I'm wasting frames or something like that. And people having that mentality can kind of take away the moment, opposed to if it's just a phone, you're snapping it and they're not worried about you missing a photo or not. Whereas for my family example, if I pull out a camera, they'll maybe stiffen up because they think it's a film photo and they don't want to ruin it. So I definitely took that away, and that was a really interesting insight. And that kind of goes back to my question of what did I want in a digital personal camera? Did I need a digital personal camera, or did I need a personal camera in general? Did I need something else besides my phone? And I kind of realized that because of those moments were special because of the people in them and the experience that I had, not because of the camera it was shot with. Would have been great if it was all shot on the 50 Lux or the 28 Summicron, like, don't get me wrong, but I think it really comes down to the moment and what you're trying to do as a photographer, which is capture that moment. And I think it's very easy, especially when you get into all these systems, that we as photographers tend to enjoy the gear, and it can kind of cloud your judgment on what you actually need, what you actually want, and at the end of the day, what your goal is when you bring a camera along with you. And then once I started thinking about it like that, I really realized that I was putting way too much effort into trying to find a camera that would make me shoot family stuff more, would make me shoot personal work more, that would kind of inspire me to get out there and shoot, which is a great thing to think of. It definitely helps to have a tool that's going to motivate you to create better work you're more proud of, to get those moments that are more special to you. But at the end of the day, if it's the camera that's motivating you, I think you're going about it for the wrong reason. And I definitely was. I was definitely trying to fix a problem that I had as a photographer by layering on a potentially new piece of gear where that's not really what I needed. And what I needed was just kind of a wake-up call, which again happened thanks to just seeing that iPhone come out alongside me bringing a very expensive, very beautiful camera, and just seeing that I need to first look at myself and say, why am I not shooting more? Why am I not taking advantage of the cameras I already have and using them? Or when it comes to film, why am I overlooking certain moments just because I don't want to waste a frame when the purpose is to capture moments like that? And then I think once I started thinking about that more and more, it really took away the whole illusion, for lack of a better term, of the Leica M10. Because while it is a fantastic camera, at the end of the day, it's just giving you a digital file. And a film camera, it's just giving you a film scan, maybe a print. And then after the whole honeymoon phase, after I looked at the digital files again weeks later, I didn't notice things like the film rendering or the shallow depth of field or anything like that. I liked the photos that I liked right when I shot them for the same reasons as I liked them for weeks later. And then it had nothing to do with the gear, had nothing to do with the lenses, the rendering, if it was on film, if it wasn't on film, the color editing, nothing. It had to do with what was happening in the photo, who was in the photo, and the actual experience that I had with it. I did also recently upgrade from the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 13 Pro, which is a jump that I'm really excited to try out once it comes in. And I think I need to first use that more as the personal everyday camera and kind of be more thoughtful with that and using it more before I kind of make the decision on buying a new M, just because I need to see where it fits. Because anytime I can kind of slim down a camera kit or a camera system in general, it's always really appealing to me. I know everyone always likes the idea of having like one camera for personal work, and I'm still stuck with the Hasselblad, the Ricoh GR, and the two M lenses that are just kind of in limbo right now. But I think the upgrade with the iPhone and seeing how my sister kind of documented that whole weekend with my family just with that was really eye-opening. It's definitely not as fun of an experience as using an M, and the files are definitely nowhere close to the same. At the end of the day, again, it doesn't always matter. And when you're looking at those kind of costs, when you have an already fantastic digital camera sitting at home, that kind of justification becomes even harder. So that kind of leaves me back to square one. I have no Leica M body, and I have two lenses just sitting on a shelf. Will I return back to the M system? I think so. In what capacity? I have no clue. Again, as I was saying at the beginning, Leica seems to be the most difficult system for me, and I was even talking to some other photographers where it's difficult to make work, which is weird because with every other system, you kind of know what you want to do, you know what you're going to get with it. But again, there's just something about it that makes it so difficult, especially when you have other systems. Although due to the content of the video that I described, it may seem that I'm definitely dead set on not having it. The perks of still having it are definitely there. Like having a digital camera, just kind of thinking of if I were to go on a trip in the future, it would be great to just have to take an M10, a system that can get me results, a system that I can enjoy using and I'm very familiar with. It's small. Don't have to deal with transporting film over the border or through flights. It definitely has its pros to it. If I wasn't really shooting for clients, didn't have the Sony system, 100% I would have a digital M. That would be my only digital body that I would have. I'd shoot the Hasselblad on film, and I'd have the GR for 35mm whenever I wanted to shoot it. But it definitely becomes a bit more confusing once you have a really good digital system, and then you have money allocated in that, and then you want to also potentially allocate a bunch of money into a digital camera from 2017. It becomes tricky. I just want to be sure that I know I'm going to be motivated to shoot more to capture the moment and not shoot just because I want to shoot a Leica M. And that's really the important part. But yeah, no real kind of definite answer at the end of this video, but I'm really curious if any of you have actually tested out a digital M and a film M. I'm wondering what you guys kind of thought about the whole experiences and comparing them. I've definitely reached out to a ton of photographers to kind of get their feel for it, and it was really split down the middle. I know they're all fantastic, talented photographers, and some of them were on the side of, I used a digital M, but I didn't like it, I'm going to stick to a film M. And then I know some that were using film M's, and now they're like, I really just use the digital ones, and some of them are even selling off their film ones. It's definitely not a decision you can make based on looking at a camera, watching reviews, or kind of asking people opinions. It's really something that you have to test out for yourself and see how it works for you. So at the end of the day, just find a camera that works for you, find something that you enjoy, and make sure you just keep capturing those moments without kind of the hurdle of hesitation of not wanting to waste film or having to get the perfect exposure or whatever it may be. Because at the end of the day, when you're looking back on it weeks, months, even years later, you're not going to care what it was shot on. You're not going to care what the conditions were like or how difficult it was to get the shot. You're only going to care about if you have the photo or you don't. And at the end of the day, that's what we're doing as photographers. So thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of long, weird ramble on my experience with the M10, and thanks for watching.